I'm Hazel Squakin, and I'm a residential school survivor. I went to the Kamloops Residential School in about 1940 to 1946 or 48. Over the years, I've accomplished many things. I've upgraded my education, and I have been a band counselor, and I have been a chief for 1 or 2 terms. And I come from my ancestors. My great-great-grandfather, I think, is a hereditary chief. And so it makes me very proud to have had a share in trying to achieve some improvements for our community, the Upper Smokemean. I've accomplished many things over the years. I have had 7 children, 2 daughters and 5 sons, but I also had twin sons. And my husband Manny and I, we ran a cattle ranch, and we done the best we could by our children. Our dream, as soon as we held our first daughter, was that we would do what we could to improve their lives. And because we felt we didn't have much ourselves, so we want to improve their lives. And so I took upgrading, and so I've learned how to write the language and read the Syilx language. And I've taught in elementary schools, and in the Smokemean Valley and in Princeton. And I've taught in our community. Upper Smokemean is not a very big band, although now we're up to 65 or 75. In 1974, there was only 29 of us. And so I feel that we've accomplished a lot for our small band. We're still trying to plan for the future, for our future generations to come yet. Being a residential school survivor, for many years it bothered me that I felt we were cheated out of our education by Indian Affairs, the government. And because my understanding was that they were to look after our interests, to look after our well-being as Indian people. Because when our ancestors signed that agreement, 1876, that the government was to take care of the Indian people and take care of the lands. But I think instead the residential school made us very resilient, and because they banned us from speaking our language and practicing our culture, and instead it gave us the will to learn our language, to revitalize our language, and to practice our culture again, which we are still passing on to the future generations to come. When I first heard Stephen Harper's apology to the residential school survivors, it made me very angry at the time, because I felt that it did not quite meet the needs or the treatment of all residential school survivors, how they lost their language, how some committed suicide, how some became alcoholics, prostitutes, and literally lost the will to improve their own lives. And I looked at my cousins in Oliver, and one is lame, and my understanding, he went to Cranbrook, and my understanding of his accident was that someone pushed him down the stairs. My treatment while I was at the residential school in Kamloops was very severe by the nuns and the priests and the brothers, because they were supposed, I feel that they were supposed to take care of us. Instead, they whipped us, and the food and the clothing was not adequate to meet our needs at the time. And Kamloops was a very poor town, I feel, and yet the nuns and the priests were supposed to be responsible for us. They gave us one slice of bread, glass of sour milk, and the oatmeal they cooked for breakfast was like a pot of glue. And the only time they would feed us properly, a 3-course meal, you could say, was when some inspector was coming to the school to see how they were treating the children. And they would put out maybe a slice of meat, 1 potato, and some vegetable. And yet the boys and the girls, mind you, we all learned how to cook, can, clean houses. We learned all those things, but we were treated like second-class citizens. And all the students were held responsible for keeping the school clean. And we done more mending and cleaning, I think, than receiving education. Because the education we may have only received about maybe 1.5 hours in the morning, and that was it. And it makes me angry when I think back to how they treated not only me but the rest of the students. And our winter clothing had holes in them. Our winter boots had probably about 1/2 inch or 1 inch hole in the winter boots. And everyone, if you were shy or were not bold, or if you were not outspoken, you did not get any good food or clothing or anything like that. You had to be assertive, I guess, and aggressive kid to be able to get anything decent. And yet I went there for 6 or 7 years, and yet they never changed their method of feeding us or anything. They continued their banning of our language and whipping us. And we had to learn how to pray. I don't understand how they could take on the responsibility of taking those children away from their parents, where they were getting adequate, more than adequate training, their own language and their culture, and all that was taken away from them.